Welcome to Home Care, Doors Open, where we discuss licensing, operations, and scaling your home care business. Whether you're just opening your doors or looking to unlock new doors to growth and success, this podcast is for you. Let's begin.
Hello, everybody. This is Lucas Carroll from the Business of Senior Care, and we have another podcast episode today in Home Care Doors Open. So excited. We have a special guest here today, Mitch Benson from A Place at Home franchise. Mitch is the franchise development manager and has been with the organization a little bit over 4 years. And I'm super excited to talk to you today, Mitch, about all things home care, all things franchise, and all things kind of compliance and licensure. So welcome.
That makes two of us, Lucas. Excited to get in the conversation today, and kind of speak a little bit to you, to our worlds overlapping, the viewers at home, right? And excited for the conversation today.
Good. Awesome. Well, a bunch of topics that I want to get to while we're talking today. And one of the first ones is I just wanted to ask you, this crazy home care space. How did you get into home care, into your current role, into the organization?
That's a great question, and one that I didn't necessarily think was going to happen. I didn't plan for this, I should say, but I'm very excited to be here. But my journey begins in sales. I've always been excited and comfortable and energetic towards talking with people and kind of communicating value to folks and trying to make their lives better with something I can either do or can introduce them to, or whatever that looks like. And had ultimately started in the world of music, right? I'm still trying to be a rock star, Lucas. You'll see me at the Fillmore Red Rocks or something like that someday soon.
Nice.
But while that's continuing to spin in the background here, I was selling guitars and loved to show people cool things and make them go loud, and make sure that went home with them so their kids could bang on stuff. It was my favorite thing to do. Still is. And through that kind of evolution, just showing folks things that they could use, get introduced to, or how I could help them to improve their lives became what I wanted to pursue in life, right? And just over 4 years ago, I was getting to a position where, if anybody remembers what almost exactly 4 years ago was, the world was definitely changing at the time in the early pandemic, and kind of looking for a pivot here. That brought me to an excellent opportunity in franchising, something I didn't necessarily understand or know what to do, but every aspect of the job post felt like what I was doing and what I was excited to continue to pursue. Largely big consideration opportunities for our clients, right? It's one thing to buy a table or a desk chair or whatever, but investing significant sums of your own capital, going through loan processes, or transitioning your career into something that is more meaningful, like our healthcare space and helping our seniors. That seemed exceedingly exciting for me, right? But I'll tell you who was almost more excited. That was my mom, right? My mom has been in healthcare my entire life, through administrative opportunities and roles and that side of things, and currently works with veteran residents in my hometown of Norfolk, Nebraska. Shout out to any northeastern Nebraska folks out here,
Nice.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, this is our worlds are very close together. And was just so excited to see some of the shop talk that I could do with my mom that I never had before. That was a really fun thing to share with her. But ultimately, what we're doing now is first a gateway into really, really important ways to improve people's lives, their families, create a legacy for themselves. But it's not just any old business. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that matters deeply to every franchisee I've spoken to every person who's here at the brand, here at A Place at Home, because they've lived it, right? And as we'll talk about not only today, but throughout your episodes here, when home care comes a calling, it grabs you by the shirt collar and says, "Deal with this." Right? You have to.
Absolutely.
People that you love are in positions where they count on you, and when you can, great. When you need help, home care is available. Right?
Absolutely.
We can start talking about that. That's what I think has really drawn me into our space, just how high the stakes are, and how loving the people who want to help this and fix these problems tend to be in home care generally.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things, first, at that very point at the end about the type of people who are drawn to home care, I've worked in a couple of different industries, but the people that have this sort of mix of mission and then also like a wanting to have a thriving business, it's just it's so unique in this space, is that yes, people want to have a business that grows, but usually they're leading with their heart. They usually have a heart for the senior population. They have a heart for providing jobs to caregivers. They have a heart for helping others, and the type of people who are drawn into this space is just, they're so fun to work with. I'm sure you've experienced that yourself.
Most definitely. You've hit the nail on the head. With the folks that we get to deal with are just very exciting entrepreneurs who are in it for, of course, some upside on the dollars and cents side of things. That's a huge motivating factor for us all. But I'll tell you this, you probably relate to this. Just about everybody I've talked to has an experience with senior care. Right? Maybe they themselves were a primary caregiver for a loved one, right? And they said to themselves, I was dealing with so much. And the moment that we were able to really look at the dollars and cents and bring in home care, this made a world difference to us. That could be that. Perhaps they did not have access to these benefits. Even as prevalent as our industry is today, a lot of folks don't know that we're here. Right?
Yeah.
This is even a thing, right? Uh, Perhaps it's years past our loved ones, and we thought, oh my gosh, this would have made such a big difference for mom and dad, right? Um, or they're actively in the space in some other capacity and say, I could do so much good work here, right? And that's how people lead our conversations, right? But it makes it seems obvious, doesn't it? Isn't that the first thing that a client would ask you, right? When you walk in the home for a consultation, they're just like, so what are you doing here? Like, why are we talking, right? It's like, well, I'm helping my dad over and over again when I'm coming into these homes talking with you, right? And for those folks to be able to work with, it definitely draws me back to early days in music. People buying guitars are typically, there's something interesting, about what we do here that they're intrinsically drawn to. And in home care, it's just so exciting to see people get into this, do well, create that financial vehicle that's going to help their families, and all along the way have helped families in really difficult positions be able to continue forward and love on everybody in their family with the help of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that we talk about for our company is how many supporting players that you need
Oh,
if you're starting a home care in any state, and providing this home care services. And our niche of the world is the licensure, and helping to make sure that they understand how to navigate obtaining a state license, their policies and procedures, and survey, and just overall being in compliance. For you, can you talk a little bit about kind of your role, and how do you what sort of role do you play with people that wanna become franchisees? How do you engage with them, and what sort of role do you play in them, the decision making process, and then coming on board?
yeah, yeah. I would say what my role here at A Place at Home consists a lot of, what we focus on is just identifying the pain in my client's life and how they want to solve it, right? What they're looking at, what's driving you to look outside of your current career, the current way that you provide for your families, things like this, right? And how do you want to get there? What does that look like at that point? Uh, this is already a pretty a big decision to make. Not necessarily taking your W-2 check from somebody else, but creating it for yourself, right? And that takes a lot of motivation to open up that door for yourself. It's no wonder that when we talk about senior care, that motivation is almost always tied to something that's happened to you and your family, right? And so let's see what that looks like. Let's get that world together. And if I'm doing things correctly, then I'm transparently showing them what we do here at A Place at Home, right? This is exactly how franchisees become successful. This is where we see folks maybe in the average category, or this is what it looks like to really, really succeed. And think about years worth of opportunities for you and your family, right? Does that match? And if we can continually go through every call, does that still match what you have in your head? Then we ultimately get to a really exciting place where they come aboard, they meet dozens of people just like them, right, who have stories that are very similar, right?
Yeah.
And the conventions that we have here, the trainings that we begin, that are just become a really fun environment for everybody. We're so on the same page with a lot of these things, right? Uh,
Awesome.
but at the same time, Lucas, there are folks that find themselves looking at something that they have in their hearts that isn't either this brand, this industry, or the direction we're heading. And that's okay. That's almost better. If this is not going to fit for us, or if we feel we can achieve our goals elsewhere, then I think folks in my position have a awesome responsibility to communicate that to folks. Right?
Yeah.
I think that you're going to be successful somewhere, but as we've seen here, and let's point to all of these things that we've looked at, this just isn't it. And if you can convey that in a respectful way, if you can hold yourself accountable to make sure that it's all clear to that individual, then we in the development world have set the right expectation with that candidate and hopefully give them a better chance the next brand that they look at as they continue their journey into what we do here.
This episode is powered by the Business of Senior Care. The Business of Senior Care helps home care, home health, and hospice companies obtain their state home care license and accreditation through one-on-one consulting, fully customized policies, and years of expertise. To learn more, visit thebizofseniorcare.com. And now, back to our episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think? I'm so excited for this question. The special sauce
Yeah.
for a place at home for the franchise, or what do you think that is makes you guys so special when you're talking to candidates?
Yeah. I think it's a couple things. I'm a pretty biased person when it comes to this, So I think the whole thing is special, right? But truth be told, I talk to a lot of folks who are spending a lot of their time evaluating several brands. Lucas, you know better than anybody that we're not the only one doing this out here, right? There's a lot of us to consider when you're looking to put your career pointed in the home care industry, right? And I think that I want to say kind of maybe two big things that make up the special sauce of a place at home, the ketchup and the mayo, if you will, of the special sauce. I didn't mean to ruin anybody's special sauce recipes there, but first, for a place at home, it's a lot about leveraging multiple revenue streams that still focuses on home care. Right? You think of restaurants who have just about everything on the menu. Right? You think about businesses that do so many things that you start to lose what their core competency is, right? And that's easy to do in healthcare, right? It's easy to offer a cornucopia of services that are either underutilized or act to muddy your passion and focus when you get into this place, right? Uh, Whereas home care really sets a strong foundation for not only revenue generation, but mission fulfillment. There's a couple other pieces that a place at home can lean into without creating entirely new silos within your business. Right? I would say the big one for us is care coordination. Right? Not only are you helping families stay at home, but when the inevitable happens and we must see a doctor, perhaps son or daughter or whoever our family is not nearby and can't accompany that individual to the appointment. Right? Well, we can offer that service. Right? We can help connect what's happening in the physical or from the physician's perspective to what's happening here in home care. Report back to everybody who needs to know and make sure that home care is better informed with whatever our physicians or local doctors are sharing with us. Right? That's a big
Absolutely.
piece here. I didn't have to get a whole warehouse or fleet of trucks to do that. Right? From that world, placement also comes into a huge opportunity for us. What we call senior living alternatives. We're helping that family understand what the next step is, after home care, if it's the right thing for their journey. Right? We can offer a big opportunity there. Again, not developing an entire, durable medical equipment world, right? This is something we can lean into with their own business. And finally, is a staffing solution for our caregivers to be able to pick up shifts in skilled nursing facilities. Right? It's almost more for them. It's almost more of a way to fill in gaps in schedules to help our caregivers, who are some of the hardest working people I have ever met, be able to provide for their own lives and careers and families. Ideally, it's through home care, but there are situations where we can look at the staffing solution to connect it with them while continuing to drive revenue for that franchisee. Right? And all of these things didn't necessarily take a huge investment outside of our home care energy focus. That's why we really like to push senior focused care, or a way of thinking about multiple services within the home care line. Right? When franchisees have all those levers to pull here at a place at home, they find themselves more successful than their competitors. Right? Uh, but that's just one side of the secret sauce. I think what's really important here, that once folks find they have the right engine to drive their financial goals, is that they want to have a culture that inspires them, that cares about them, elevates them, and celebrates them. And so the second element of our special sauce is kind of this emerging franchisor world that we're really comfortable in, right? That we're growing from. The culture that exists amongst our franchisees is one of collaboration, celebration, and helping everyone see success. I
Absolutely.
had to mute my G chat over here because our continuous channel that always connects franchisees is popping off in my ears, as it should be. Folks are
Yeah.
going through things, they ask for help, or they say, this is a big success that I've had. That's just instantaneous. That's not even part of the material outside of everyday coaching, out of conversations with our corporate staff here to help them grow. But that element of collaboration and tight knit community is not important to every franchise investor, but it is important to every place and home franchisee.
Yeah.
Put those
Absolutely.
together, boom, we got secret sauce.
There you go. I love it. Ketchup and mayo. I don't know. I don't know if I'd do that, but but it
It's not for
works.
everybody.
Yeah, it works. It works.
Right.
Um, a couple points that you hit on. One of those about that I think you guys do a really good job on is helping somebody during the prospecting process and evaluating about kind of an eyes wide open approach.
Mhm.
One thing we really try to help on in from a licensure perspective when we're working with a prospect on that's in the process is just like let's talk about before you get into it, let's talk about what's going
Mm.
on in your state. Let's talk about whether or not you need a registered nurse. Let's talk about what the qualifications are to serve as the administrator role. And then there's always nuances on what's the latest, how long is it going to take to get your license and get your doors open. And so the proactiveness I really enjoy because we have conversations with when somebody's in the prospecting phase and saying, hey, I need to be able to communicate eyes wide open, like to the prospect, like, hey, here's what it looks like, here's the time frame, here are the people that you need, and here's what you're going to need in order to get it done, and making sure, do you have any questions, can we help to answer any of that, because it's really hard on the other side to we've worked with home care folks that get into it and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I needed a registered nurse in my state. I didn't realize that I don't meet the qualifications to serve, so I'm going to an administrator, so I have to go out and find somebody
Mm.
to do that, and squaring all those things up, making sure that that part is, that there's no questions, that everybody's good, and we're ready to move forward once you sign on that. So I appreciate that, and that we're only one stakeholder in, the whole wheel that it takes place to get these franchisees going. But I think that's a microcosm of your approach when you work with prospects.
Mhm. It absolutely is. And what you've shared so far is really important, right? Because I think what we do more than ever now, folks in my roles in these kinds of businesses, things like this, overlap with compliance specialists, with experts like yourselves, increasingly now than we ever have. And I just feel that's the best way to do it, right? Because it's about setting that expectation. What you've done so far is not only shared what the expectations are, but you've also had those painful conversations when folks did not realize that's how this is going to work, right? And I question myself, like, well, who's at fault there, right? It's certainly not Lucas, right? First and foremost, right? Lucas didn't do anything wrong, and he's here just sharing what the path looks like. Well, I don't think it's the candidate's fault either. Unfortunately, at that time, likely a franchisee, right? I don't think it's their fault. They did nothing but, trust implicitly in this franchise system that we all have a lot of love for. So that really only leaves like one other person, right? you know, who did not set that expectation with someone. And I feel that we ought to take that on as development professionals. It makes sense. Haven't we taken this entire process with a prospect to set expectations in every other element, right? I certainly told them how much their royalties are, right? Didn't I set that expectation? Why not do this, right? And increasingly, I will field that same individual who has a misunderstanding of our industry. And I feel so lucky to have that because everyone else in the line of folks that individual talks to ought to have a new basis of understanding. This person understands, at least at a high level, what the licensing requirements look like, right? And that didn't just happen. I didn't just look through every single piece of regulation material to understand what's happening in over nearly 36 states, right? I didn't do that. The business of senior care did that though, and are some of the biggest partners to a place at home when it comes to setting this very specific uh, expectation with our candidates. What you've shared with us is a wealth of knowledge, which is an incredible website that has up to date information, that has so many resources for folks in the candidate seat as well as the development seat. We can talk about what that expectation looks like, right? I can't thank you enough for all the work that you do, making that accessible and reliable for folks who want to take the step further and bring it to candidates in this process.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I think it's a collaboration, and there's so much that you have to juggle on your side when somebody's interested as a potential franchisee. There's so many boxes that you have to check, that they have to check, and licensing fits in there for sure. But making an overall culture fit, I think, is really important, and you guys do a great job of that when you bring people on. I was just thinking as you were talking, like if there are there some major milestones or something when you're taking some things when you're taking somebody through the process that you're like, I always, because licensing I think is one of them, but are there things that you're like, I have to hit on this, I have to hit on these things, I have to make sure that I communicate these things and get their feedback? Is there a roadmap that you, or some high points that you usually hit on?
Absolutely. And thank you for asking, right? Because it needs a roadmap. When an individual is looking at investing in the home care space, potentially selecting franchise partners, right? There ought to be a roadmap, right? That's part of the allure. I don't have to figure this out myself. I'm not alone out here wandering through what it looks like to start this myself, right? And in my experience, over the last 4 years, there tend to be a similar group of questions that nearly unfold in similar ways through conversation to conversation, right? And this is what we'll call our discovery process, right? Let's discover what it looks like if I'm in these shoes, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I would say the very first time that we talk is the culmination of that individual's, potentially years long pursuit, right? They've looked at this for so long. They've had friends who've got into something, right? Their job shifted on them. They've always thought about this. And finally, they're talking to a representative of a brand of what their life may look like should they join, right? That's when we typically have those conversations about, how has senior care presented itself in your life, right? What connection do you have with our industry? Why does this matter to you more than anything else? Right? To me, that's a huge piece to hit on, um, because it's going to happen over and over again. Every
The
client, every
why.
family member, the
Yeah.
why.
The
The
why.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Lucas. The why, right? And that why is going to push you through the early parts of your business. Is going to almost automatically connect you with the families that you serve, right? And that why will be a guiding light whenever anything comes out that you weren't expecting, right? That's really what's going to build a decade worth of success in your business, right? And that said, whys look and sound and mean different things to different people, right?
That's so
I'm
true.
looking for one that fits with what we do, right? Uh, let's say we have that. Let's say that someone has just this magnetism to them, that a servant leader is very much what they are, that helping someone who depends on them is natural, if not this duty they're honored to serve, right? Let's say that happens. Okay. uh, I then take them through a second conversation about how we get in front of that client, right? Because unfortunately, we don't pick up a phone and call the client store and say, I'd like a dozen clients, send them on, I'm ready for them, right? I've been working on that. And if it happens one day, you'll be the first to know, okay? It takes a lot of work when we're talking
Yeah.
about marketing that business. And I never want to, I always want to set an expectation with someone. It does not work like shaking a tree and boom, you have an opportunity to serve. You are telling your story. You're putting yourself in positions to make an impact by talking to people who have problems, right? You're that solution to them. And I need you to get out there. And when we do that, I show them images and pictures and real life social media posts of franchisees actively participating in those strategies. And I ask, does that look like what you want to do? Does that make sense? Does it give you energy? Or do you think to yourself, that's the last thing I want to do? Right? Again, all in the pursuit of a match, a good fit. Okay. Uh, from that point, let's say it works. That's exactly up my alley. I want to do this. Right. Typically, the third conversation is about the nuts and bolts of starting the business. Right. And this is where I almost always talk to you about your company and what licensing looks like. right? When we talk about operations here at a place at home, I'm usually getting that individual's mindset from signing a franchise agreement and paying franchise fees to the point that we are opening our doors. Right? I literally do this. If anybody's been on a call with me, they'll see me do this all the time. That's the time frame I'm talking to, right? And almost always, realistically speaking, they say, well, how long is that going to take? I typically ask, well, where do you live? Right? The only reason I say that is because of all the information that Lucas Carroll in the business of senior care has shared with licensing, right? And that takes explaining, right? If we live in one state versus the other that both require licenses to operate in our industry, the thing about our industry is that they're usually patchwork specific to the state's processes. And I think it's my obligation to have a firm grasp of what that looks like to give someone an accurate representation of how long it's going to take. Right?
Yeah.
That's where we start. Let me talk to you about the license. What does it mean? What is it called? Right? It's what is it called? Let's just stop there for a little bit, Lucas. Is it a home care license?
It's different. Yeah.
Mostly, not even that. It's almost not mostly that, but get them familiar with their terminology, right? What does it cost something? Almost always I'm answering questions about, whoa, I thought this was non-medical home care. Why do I need a license at all? Wait, there's a nurse involved? Let's have that conversation, right? Let's build that up here. And more often than not, a visual aid I use in that conversation is the Business of Senior Care's website, right? Sharing that with folks, the information that's expertly put together is really helpful for them, right? Yeah. And when we can do that, I, also get a sales opportunity to discuss the other elements of support, training, and how my team gets them ready. But my team is so many people here at corporate, including the great partners that we bring into that process, just like your company. Right?
Yeah.
From there, we'll wrap this up here for everybody following along in the discovery process. But you'll also need to talk about investment pieces, what it costs to really start this business, what your territories look like, what you can serve, where you're at here, and then almost always meeting the team, right? I may be the one talking to you the most in the beginning, but you will certainly spend the most time with everybody else in this office. I want to be sure that you get to know them, right?
Yeah.
And when we do that, we feel really comfortable with folks and the rubber hits the road where they start building their business after having signed agreements and paid fees and working with some of our great vendors, just like the Business of Senior Care.
Awesome. It's such a good job of just laying out. Thank you for doing that. Just kind of what that process looks like and all of the different components involved. And I think what you had said, really the culture fit of making sure all those other things can be in place, but it's got to be the right fit for for the franchisor, for them, everything, and the why. I really liked how you said that. The why, once that falls in place, when things get hard, when it's late nights, when it's tough getting your business going, falling back on that why will make all the difference in the world, for sure.
We can't stress that enough. You and I know that there's a built-in aspect to our industry that is ultimately very tragic, right? We don't have a business because everybody's having the best day. We have that because they're not, and we want to get them closer to more of those, right? And so when that lives out a magnetism, an inevitable servant leadership, then you're in the right place. And the business that you build is something that you respect, that you're on fire for, and can share that with other people, right? And perfect. I think you can do that with a lot of businesses. Sure, you can, absolutely. I think in home care, it's almost like the name of the game. It's the whole point,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That's perfect. That's a great place to wrap up, I think. I mean, just hit it on the head in terms of who are the clients that we get to work with, the franchisees that you guys bring on board, and helping them to support them to be successful, and that's great. So I think that's good for today, Mitch. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Lucas, I really appreciate what you're doing here, what you're doing to share more and more information about our industry, about what it looks like for folks who have always had that in the back of their heads. I could be out here, I could do this, right? And the last thing I'll leave with anybody watching, right, is that it does take a very strong cast of supporting players to put on your production, right? And spend time looking at those players, talk with them, understand who they are, ask questions that will be especially impactful to you. And when you find those folks, believe in it, trust in it, be excited to build something great, because there's brands that really care about you. There's vendors that are here to make sure that you're the most successful you could be. And we can't wait to get started.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks again, Mitch Benson from The Place at Home. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lucas.
If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Business of Senior Care. We'll see you next time on Home Care. Doors open.